I never imagined that the woman who smiled so sweetly across my dinner table would be the one slowly killing me. It started quietly, like a cough you ignore, a headache you wave off. My name's Harold Jenkins. I'm 72 years old, retired from the railroad, and I've always believed family was everything. My son, Daniel, was my pride, the one who made it out of our small Pennsylvania town to become a man with a degree, a wife, and a fine house in the suburbs. When he married Evelyn, I was happy for him. She was polite, charming, the kind of woman who'd kiss your cheek and call you Dad before you even asked her to. I thought, well, maybe my boys finally found peace. But peace, that's a funny thing. It doesn't fade all at once. It decays slowly, like rust beneath fresh paint. Evelyn insisted I move in with them after my wife passed. You shouldn't be alone, Dad, she said, her hand on my arm, her eyes soft with what looked like care. Daniel nodded beside her, proud, grateful. It'll be good for all of us, he added. So I packed my boxes, my wife's old photograph, and moved into their guest room. I told myself I was lucky. Most old men spend their last years in homes that smell like bleach and loneliness. I had family, or so I thought. The first time Evelyn made me tea, it tasted a little off, bitter, with a metallic tang at the back of my tongue. Just a new brand, she said with a laugh when I mentioned it. Organic stuff, good for your heart. I smiled, trusting her. Because why wouldn't I? But within weeks, I began to change. The headaches came first, dull thuds that grew sharper with every passing day. Then came the nausea, the weakness in my legs. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, trembling. Evelyn would rush in, pressing a cool cloth to my forehead, whispering, "You poor thing, your body's just adjusting." Daniel never noticed much. He was always busy. Long hours at the office, late-night calls. I'd catch him smiling at his phone, probably texting his wife from the next room, thinking she was taking such good care of me. I didn't want to complain. I'd already lost my wife. I didn't want to lose my son too. But the sickness didn't stop. In fact, it got worse. I started forgetting things. My vision blurred. One morning, I found myself staring into the mirror and hardly recognizing the old man looking back. Pale skin, yellowed eyes, hair falling thinner than ever. Evelyn kept bringing me tea. "It's the only thing that helps," she'd insist. "Trust me, Dad." And I did. Until one afternoon, I caught her smiling while I drank it. Not a warm, kind smile, but something colder, darker, like satisfaction. It passed quickly, but something inside me stirred. A quiet alarm bell. That night, when everyone was asleep, I went to the kitchen and poured out the leftover tea. As it swirled down the drain, I saw it. A faint shimmer, like powder settling at the bottom of the cup. My heart raced. The next morning, Evelyn was already in the kitchen, humming. The kettle whistled. "Same as always, Dad?" she asked, her voice sugar-sweet. I nodded slowly. "Sure, Evelyn." But this time I didn't drink it. I pretended to. I waited until she turned her back, then poured it into the plant by the window. The plant withered within a week. That's when I knew. Something was terribly wrong. I started taking notes in an old leather journal. Every headache, every dizzy spell, every meal and cup of tea Evelyn served me. It was the only thing that kept me sane. I needed proof. I needed to know. But how do you accuse your son's wife, the woman who calls you Dad, of poisoning you? I prayed every night, asking my late wife for guidance. And one night, as I lay weak and trembling in bed, I thought I heard her whisper, "Watch her hands." The next morning I did, and what I saw chilled me. Evelyn wasn't pouring tea straight from the pot. She had a small silver vial she'd open when she thought I wasn't looking. Just a few drops each time. Quick, practiced, like she'd done it 100 times before. My hands shook. My throat tightened. 18 months. That's how long this had been happening. I could feel my body fading day by day. But that morning, something inside me woke up. Fear turned into fire. If she wanted me dead, she was going to learn that old men don't go quietly. And as I sat there, pretending to sip that cursed tea, I made a promise to myself. It was time to set the trap. the trap begins. For days after that, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every time Evelyn walked into the room, I could feel my pulse race. Not from fear anymore, but from the weight of what I now knew. She wasn't caring for me. She was killing me one cup at a time. I didn't know why. Was it money? The house? My son's inheritance? Or did she just hate me that much? Whatever her reason, I had one goal now: survive long enough to prove it. The first thing I did was stop drinking anything she handed me. I told her the tea upset my stomach. She frowned, pretending to be hurt, then switched to healthy smoothies. Different color, same smell. I thanked her, took the glass, and poured it down the sink when she wasn't watching. The more I pretended to trust her, the bolder she became. She'd hover near me at breakfast, asking if I was feeling better. She'd smile when I said I was still tired. But I wasn't just tired, I was pretending. And I was watching, always watching. My son Daniel was the hardest part. He trusted her completely. Whenever I hinted that something was wrong, he brushed it off. "Dad, she's taking care of you around the clock," he'd say. "You should be grateful." Grateful. The word burned in my chest. Every time I looked at him, I saw my boy, the same one who used to climb into my lap when storms scared him, the same one I worked double shifts for just so he could go to college. And now, that same son couldn't see that the woman beside him was slowly taking my life away. So I decided not to tell him. Not yet. I needed evidence. I started saving every cup she gave me. I'd pretend to drink, then pour the rest into a jar I hid under the bed. I labeled each one with the date. Some were cloudy, others clear, but all had that faint metallic scent. When I had 10 jars, I wrapped them in a towel and hid them in the attic. That's where I found something else. In an old box of Daniel's college things, I found a folder medical records. Not mine. Hers. Evelyn Margaret Davis. She'd been treated for paranoid tendencies and control disorders 5 years before she met Daniel. She'd been prescribed medication, but from the empty pill bottles I found in her dresser later that week, it looked like she'd stopped taking them. That's when I realized this wasn't just greed. It was something darker. One night, I heard them arguing downstairs. Her voice was sharp, venomous. "You said we'd have the house by now." I froze. Daniel's voice was softer, tired. "He's my father, Evelyn. He's not going anywhere." Then silence. A door slammed. That's when I knew. She was desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. The next morning, she brought me breakfast, eggs, toast, and the usual tea. "Try to eat, Dad," she said sweetly. "You're looking better." I smiled. "You've been good to me, Evelyn. Maybe too good." For a moment, her smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "Oh, nothing," I said, pretending to laugh. "Just not used to all this attention." She watched me eat, carefully, like she always did. When she left the room, I wrapped the toast in a napkin and hid it under my blanket. Later, I scraped a bit off and sealed it in a small envelope. That's when I made the call. The next day, I went to the pharmacy on the corner, pretending I was picking up vitamins. But instead, I asked to speak to a man named Dr. Coleman, a retired chemist who'd been a friend of mine for years. He owed me a favor. I handed him one of the jars. "Tell me what's in this," I said quietly. He looked at me, confused. "Tea. Maybe," I said. "Or maybe something worse." He took it, promised to call me in 2 days. 2 of the longest days of my life. Every time Evelyn entered my room, I could feel her eyes on me. Studying, calculating. She thought I was getting weaker, closer to death. And I let her think that. I stumbled more, coughed louder, left pills half crushed in the sink to make it look like I couldn't keep anything down. But in truth, I'd never been more awake. On the second evening, Dr. Coleman called. His voice was tight, almost trembling. "Harold," he said, "you need to get out of that house." My stomach turned cold. "What did you find?" "Traces of thallium, a metal poison. The slow, hard to detect. Builds up over months. Whoever's giving you this, they know exactly what they're doing. Thallium, the same poison that once killed spies in the Cold War." I hung up and sat in silence for a long time. I wasn't just being poisoned, I was being erased. Slowly, quietly. But now I had proof. It wasn't enough to survive anymore. I wanted justice. And I knew just how to get it. The trap had already begun. She just didn't know she was walking straight into it. The bait is set. After that call from Dr. Coleman, something inside me shifted. The fear that had been choking me for months turned into something sharper. Resolve. For 18 months, Evelyn had been playing her little game, watching me crumble, pretending to be my savior. But she'd forgotten one thing: old men may walk slow, but we think fast. And now that I knew what she was using, thallium, I knew I had to move carefully. If she even suspected I'd found out, she'd finish the job. Quickly. So I played along. I started acting weaker than ever. I groaned when I walked, left my food untouched, pretended to sleep most of the day. Every cough, every stumble, a part of the performance. Evelyn started smiling more. Too much. She thought I was nearing the end. That's when I knew my plan was working. I began setting small traps, not the kind with metal springs, but the kind that catch truth. I bought a cheap pen camera online. Daniel helped me set up my laptop weeks ago. He didn't know I'd hidden the small camera in the corner of my room. Each day, I let it record from morning to night. And sure enough, it didn't take long. On the second night, while I pretended to be asleep, Evelyn walked in quietly. She carried my cup, the same tea she'd been feeding me since the start. She didn't see the red light blinking from the camera's reflection. She opened that small silver vial again. Just 2 drops. Quick, efficient, like muscle memory. Then she set the cup down by my bed, smiled at my sleeping face, and whispered, "Almost done, old man." Then she left. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it echo. I didn't move until morning. When I replayed the footage the next day, my hands shook. The camera had caught everything. Her face, her hands, her words. It was the proof I'd been praying for. But proof wasn't enough. Not for me. I wanted her to know that I knew. And I wanted her to break. The next morning, I called my old friend, Sheriff Warren. We'd served in the army together back in the day. He'd helped me once before when my car got stolen years ago. When I told him what was happening, his voice went deadly serious. "Harold, that's attempted murder. Don't do anything stupid. Let me handle this." But I shook my head. "No, Warren. She's smart. If you walk in here without evidence she can't deny, she'll twist it. Cry her way out. I know her type." He sighed. "Then what do you want from me?" "I want backup," I said. "When the time comes, I'll call you. But I'm going to make her confess first." So the next day, I brewed the tea myself. I made sure she saw me. "You've done enough for me, Evelyn," I said, smiling. "You rest today." Her face tightened. "Oh, Dad, you don't have to." "I insist," I said. She hesitated, then nodded. But her eyes were nervous. I poured 2 cups. One for me, one for her. We sat across the table, sunlight filtering through the kitchen blinds. I lifted my cup, pretending to sip. She didn't drink hers. "Not thirsty?" I asked gently. No, I already had some," she said, glancing away. I leaned back in my chair, smiling faintly. "Evelyn, it's funny, you know, how habits form. Every morning, same tea, same kettle, same drops." Her hand froze midair. "What drops?" I shrugged. "You tell me. The silver vial? The one in your apron pocket." Her face went white. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I continued softly. "It's a dangerous thing, thallium. Works slow. Leaves no taste. But it leaves a trail in the blood, in the hair, in the soil. Even in tea leaves." Evelyn's lips trembled. You don't know what you're talking about." I smiled. "You're right. Maybe I don't. But the sheriff might. He's been very interested in this tea lately." Her eyes widened. "You called the police?" I leaned forward. "No. I called an old friend. And he's waiting outside." That's when she snapped. She lunged for the cup, knocking it over, spilling the tea across the table. "Why couldn't you just die?" she screamed. "It was supposed to be easy." Her voice echoed through the kitchen. And right then, before I could even react, the front door burst open. Sheriff Warren and 2 deputies stormed in, badges glinting. Evelyn froze mid-motion, her face drained of color. They cuffed her hands while she screamed, twisting, crying. "You can't prove anything," she shouted. Warren looked at me. "We've got it all, son. Your camera footage, the chemist's report, even her fingerprints on the vial we found in the trash." I nodded slowly, the weight of 18 months pressing down on me. It was over. As they let her out, Evelyn turned back. Her eyes wild, her hair messy, her voice breaking. "You ruined everything. Daniel was supposed to have it all. The house. The money." Her words sliced the air like glass. I just stared at her and whispered, "He'll have what matters most. The truth." But the hardest part wasn't catching her. It was waiting for Daniel to come home. Because I knew no poison could hurt me worse than the look on my son's face when he found out what she'd done. And that moment was coming. Very soon. The son's denial. The house was too quiet after they took Evelyn away. The clatter of her heels, the soft hum of her fake sweetness, gone. All that remained was silence. Heavy, unfamiliar silence. But peace didn't come with it. No, peace would have been easier than what came next. Because I knew the hardest part wasn't over. Daniel still didn't know. And I had no idea how a father tells his son that the woman he loves, the woman he built his life around, was trying to murder his old man. When Daniel finally came home that night, I was sitting in the living room, the same spot where he'd placed me 18 months ago when he and Evelyn first convinced me to move in. Back then, he'd been smiling, proud. Now his face was pale, confused, storming with anger. "Dad, what the hell happened?" he shouted, tossing his car keys on the table. "Why are there cops outside? Why did they take Evelyn in handcuffs?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the floor, my hands trembling slightly. Not from weakness, but from the weight of what I had to say. "Sit down, son," I said quietly. He shook his head, pacing. "No. Tell me what's going on." I looked up slowly. "Evelyn's been poisoning me." He froze. Then he laughed. A short, nervous laugh. "That's not funny, Dad. It's not a joke." "Poisoning you?" He rubbed his temples. "Come on. She's been taking care of you for over a year. Cooking, cleaning, pouring thallium into my tea." I interrupted softly. He blinked. "What?" I reached for the folder on the table. Dr. Coleman's report, the police photos, the video stills. I slid them toward him. "Here, read it." He stared at the papers but didn't touch them. No, this is insane." "It's the truth," I said. She couldn't do that. Evelyn loves you like her own father." I almost laughed at that, but I couldn't. The words just sat there between us, thick and poisonous as the tea she used to serve me. "Daniel," I said softly. "I have her on video," she confessed. "The police have the vial, her fingerprints, everything." He shook his head violently. "No, she wouldn't. You must have misunderstood something. Maybe it's medicine." "It's thallium, Daniel." My voice cracked. "It's a metal poison. They used it on spies. There's no misunderstanding that." He sank onto the couch, hands gripping his hair. His lips trembled. His breathing quickened. I could see it. The denial crumbling, the truth pressing against him like a wave he couldn't stop. She said you were sick," he whispered. "She said your mind was going, that you were forgetting things. She said you'd started hiding food, accusing her of things." I looked at him, tears stinging my eyes. "She made me think I was losing it, Daniel. But I wasn't. She wanted me gone, so she could have this house, the money, everything your mother and I worked for." He buried his face in his hands. "Oh God!" For a long time, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked softly on the wall. Somewhere outside, the siren of a distant police car wailed and faded into the night. Finally, Daniel looked up, his eyes red. "You knew. For how long?" "Long enough," I said. "I caught on a few months ago. I didn't want to believe it either." He swallowed hard. "Why didn't you tell me?" I smiled sadly. Because I knew you wouldn't believe me. He opened his mouth to protest, but stopped. Because he knew I was right. The next morning, the police called. Evelyn had refused to talk at first. But once they showed her the footage, her hands, her words, she broke. She confessed everything. How she'd researched poisons online. How she'd bought the thallium through a chemical supplier. How she'd started small, just a few drops a day, to make it look like my health was fading naturally. And how she planned to help Daniel sell the house after I passed. She said it all. Calmly. Almost proudly. When the officer told me, I just nodded. I wasn't surprised anymore. But Daniel was. He came into my room that evening, looking like a ghost. She admitted it, he whispered. I nodded. She said she did it for me. I sighed. No, son. She did it for herself. Don't let her twist that in your mind. He sank into the chair across from me, his shoulders shaking. I loved her, Dad. I thought she was my future. I looked at him. My boy, broken, lost. I know you did. But sometimes love blinds us worse than hate ever could. He didn't respond. He just stared at the floor for a long time. Then he whispered, I'm so sorry. I reached out, put my hand on his shoulder. It's not your fault, son. She fooled us both. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling. The air felt heavier, quieter. I thought catching her would bring peace. But peace doesn't come easily when your own family has turned into a battlefield. Daniel moved out the next week. He said he couldn't stay in that house. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I understood. But before he left, he handed me something. My old pocket watch, the one he'd borrowed years ago. I'll come back, Dad, he said softly, when I can face it again. And then he was gone. I sat there on that porch for hours after he drove off, watching the horizon fade from gold to gray. The house was mine again, but it had never felt emptier. Because the truth, I realized, is that poison doesn't just live in a vial. It lives in the silence, in the trust broken beyond repair. And though I'd survived Evelyn's poison, I wasn't sure I'd ever recover from my son's disbelief. The trial and the letter. Months passed. The seasons changed. The summer's warmth fading into the cold breath of fall. But the weight of what happened never left. Evelyn's face haunted every corner of that house. Her voice echoed in the silence. You ruined everything. Daniel barely called anymore. Couldn't blame him. Every ring of the phone carried a mix of hope and dread. Hope that it was him, dread that it wasn't. But life doesn't stop for broken hearts. It drags you forward, even when you're not ready. The district attorney called one morning. Mr. Jenkins, he said, Evelyn's trial is set for next month. We'll need your statement. I knew it was coming, but hearing it out loud still made my stomach twist. The day of the trial, the courthouse felt colder than winter. Gray walls, whispering voices, the scent of coffee and paper and judgment. They brought her in wearing shackles. Evelyn, once polished, confident, now looked like a ghost of herself. Hair tangled, eyes sunken, skin pale as ash. But even then, she carried that same defiance. Chin up, lips tight, like she still believed she could talk her way out of hell. When our eyes met, she smiled. Not a warm smile, a reminder that she didn't fear me. The prosecutor laid everything out. The chemical reports, the video footage from my room, the confession she gave under questioning. Every piece of evidence was like a hammer striking the same nail. Her lawyer tried to twist it. Mental instability, he argued. She wasn't in control of her actions. But I'd seen her eyes too many times to believe that. Evelyn knew exactly what she was doing. When it was my turn to speak, the room went quiet. I walked slowly to the witness stand, every step echoing through that hollow space. They swore me in, and then the prosecutor asked, Mr. Jenkins, can you describe what it felt like, realizing someone you trusted was poisoning you? I swallowed hard. My hands trembled on the rail. It felt, I said softly, like dying before your time, but not from the poison, from the betrayal. Every word hung heavy in the air. I looked at Evelyn. She didn't flinch. She looked me in the eyes every day, I continued, and called me Dad. She smiled while she poured death into my cup. And I smiled back, too, because I didn't know. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked away for a moment. I finished quietly, if justice still means something, then let it mean this, that trust, once broken like that, deserves an answer. When I stepped down, I didn't look at her again, but I felt her eyes burning into my back the whole way. The jury took 3 hours. Guilty. Attempted murder in the first degree. 25 years to life. The gavel came down like thunder. It was over, or at least I thought it was. A week after the trial, a plain brown envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. My name written in a shaky hand. I knew before I opened it who it was from. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Harold, you think you won, but you don't understand. I never did this just for the house. Daniel told me things. Things about how you favored his mother, how you never saw what I did for him. I gave him everything, and he still loved you more. You took him from me, so I took everything else. My breath caught. So that was it. The poison wasn't only meant to kill me. It was meant to destroy what I had with my son. To make Daniel hate me, blame me, turn me into a burden until the day I was gone. And she'd almost succeeded. I folded the letter slowly, hands trembling, and locked it in my desk drawer. Some truths I decided didn't need to be shared. Not yet. Daniel was still healing. He didn't need to know the darkness she carried inside her even after prison walls closed around her. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because evil doesn't end when the judge says guilty. It lingers in memories, in scars, in the way a son looks at his father and still wonders who's to blame. That night, I went out to the porch and sat beneath the old maple tree. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "You see that, Mary?" Talking to my late wife as I often did. She's gone now, but she almost took me with her. For a long time, I sat there, listening to the wind. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid. Still, the next morning I called Sheriff Warren. "She sent me a letter," I told him. He came by, read it, and shook his head. "She's bitter, Harold. Don't let her words stick. You're free now." "Maybe," I said softly, "but freedom feels a lot like loneliness." He looked at me and didn't argue, because we both knew the truth. Justice can punish the guilty, but it can't undo the pain. The return of the sun. Winter had just started to fade when I saw him again. It was a Sunday morning, the kind where the air smells of frost and fresh soil, when the sun peeks over the hills like it's still unsure if it wants to stay. I was sitting on the porch, sipping coffee that actually tasted like coffee now, not fear. The creak of tires on gravel made me look up. Daniel's old blue pickup rolled into the driveway. I froze. My hand shook just a little, coffee rippling in the cup. He stepped out slowly, his eyes shaded under a worn cap. He looked older, or maybe I was just seeing him differently. For a long time, neither of us moved. Finally, he said, "Hey, Dad." 2 words, but they hit harder than any verdict. He stood at the edge of the porch, like a man unsure whether he was welcome. "I didn't think you'd come," I said. My voice cracked on the last word. He gave a half-smile, tired, guilty. "I wasn't sure if I should." "You're my son," I said quietly. "You should." He nodded, eyes on the ground. Then he stepped up, sat in the chair beside me. For a while we didn't talk, just listened to the wind hum through the trees. Somewhere a crow called. The world felt still, like it was waiting to see if we'd finally say what needed to be said. "I read about the trial," Daniel said eventually. "Didn't feel right showing up there. I didn't know what to say." "You didn't owe me words," I told him. "Just truth." He sighed, rubbing his face with both hands. "I should have seen it, Dad. I lived under the same roof and I didn't see what she was doing to you." I turned to him. "Son, when you love someone, you see what you want to see. She fooled you because she fooled everyone, including me." He looked up, eyes wet. "You almost died because of her. And I defended her. I told you that you were paranoid. His voice broke on that last word. And suddenly I saw not the man he'd become, but the boy he used to be. The one who scraped his knees climbing the apple tree, who'd run to me crying when he thought the sky sounded angry during storms. I reached out, laid my hand over his. We both got poisoned, son, just in different ways. He stared at me, confused. She gave you lies, I said softly, and me poison. But both of them were meant to kill us, just slower in your case. Daniel let out a shaky laugh, then wiped his eyes. I can't change what happened, he said, but I can make it right, if you'll let me. How? I asked. He hesitated. I want to come home for a while, fix the house, clean up the place. Maybe fix us too. That word home hit me deep. It had been a long time since anyone called this old place that. You don't need to fix me, Daniel, I said gently. You just need to be here. He nodded slowly. Then that's what I'll do. The next few weeks were strange, almost tender. Daniel moved back into his old room. The same creaky floorboards, the same faded wallpaper with fishing boats. He worked quietly, fixing loose shingles, replacing window screens, painting the porch rail white again. He didn't talk much at first, but sometimes at night, I'd hear him in the workshop, sanding old wood, steady, patient, like he was smoothing the rough edges of both the house and his guilt. And in his silence, I saw something changing. One night, over dinner, he said, "Do you ever think you'll forgive her?" I set down my fork. The question hung heavy between us. I already have, I said after a moment. Forgiving her doesn't mean forgetting what she did. It means she doesn't get to live here anymore. I tapped my chest. In here. He nodded slowly. I don't think I can. You don't have to, I said. You just have to learn how to live without the hate. Days turned into weeks. One evening, he found an old photo album on the shelf. Mary, my late wife, smiling with baby Daniel in her arms. He traced the picture with his fingers. Mom would have hated what happened to us. She would have, I said softly. But she'd also remind us that love's the only thing worth saving after everything else burns. He smiled faintly. She said that. Every time I forgot. We sat there flipping through memories. Birthdays, camping trips, laughter frozen in film. And in that quiet moment, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. A few days later, Daniel asked, "What'll you do now?" I looked out the window at the horizon glowing gold. Live, I said. Maybe plant something again. Not just in the garden. In here. He smiled. Mind if I help? Always could use an extra pair of hands, I replied. That night, as I watched him stack tools in the shed, I realized something simple but profound. Sometimes the best revenge isn't punishment. It's healing. And for the first time in years, I slept without dreams. Just the sound of my son moving quietly through the house. A rhythm of life coming back, one step at a time. The final confession. It was almost spring when I realized peace never comes without a final echo from the past. The snow had melted into thin ribbons across the yard, and the air carried that strange promise of renewal. The kind that makes you think life might just start over if you let it. Daniel was painting the fence that morning when the letter came. A plain white envelope, no return address. My name scrawled in a handwriting I hadn't seen in over a year. Evelyn's. I froze the moment I saw it. My stomach turned as if my body remembered something my mind wanted to forget. I placed it on the table, staring at it for a long time. Daniel came in from outside, sweat on his brow, the scent of paint following him. He saw the letter. His face darkened. Is that from her? I nodded. Do you want me to burn it? For a moment I was tempted. The fire pit out back had eaten enough of my past. Old clothes, her photos, the hospital bills she left unpaid. One more piece of paper wouldn't matter. But I shook my head. No, I need to read it. Whatever this is, I need it done. Daniel didn't argue. He just sat across from me, arms crossed, as I tore the envelope open. Inside was a single page. The words were shaky, uneven, as if written by a trembling hand. Harold, If you're reading this, I'm gone. Not gone like you think, not dead. Gone because I can't live with what I've done. You were never supposed to die. The tea was supposed to make you weak, not kill you. I just wanted control, to make you dependent, to make Daniel listen to me. I thought if you were out of the way, if you were sick enough, he'd finally stop comparing me to his mother. He always said you were stronger than both of us combined. I wanted to prove him wrong. I wanted to make you need me. But I didn't realize until too late that I'd become my own poison. My hands trembled as I read. When you stopped drinking the tea, when I saw you watching me, I knew. You weren't dying anymore. You were waiting. That scared me more than anything. Because deep down, I think I wanted you to catch me. I wanted someone to stop me before I went too far. Tell Daniel I'm sorry. Tell him I loved him, even when I didn't know how to show it. And then, at the bottom, in fading ink, I didn't mean to kill love. But that's all I ever did. The words blurred as my eyes filled. I set the letter down carefully, like it might break. Daniel stared at it for a long time. She's lying, he muttered, trying to make herself sound human. Maybe, I said softly, or maybe she's telling the truth. The kind of truth that hurts more than lies. He slammed his fist on the table. She tried to murder you, Dad. She doesn't deserve our understanding. I looked at him, really looked. The anger in his eyes wasn't just for her. It was for himself. For every time he didn't believe me. I leaned back, took a breath. Hatred's heavy, son. Don't carry hers too. He didn't answer. But later that night, I found him in the workshop, sitting in the dark, the letter folded on the bench beside him. His hands were clenched, jaw tight, eyes red. When he finally spoke, it was a whisper. She said I compared her to Mom. Maybe I did. Maybe I made her feel small. You didn't make her poison me, I said. Her choices are her own. He looked at me then, eyes full of something that wasn't anger anymore, just exhaustion. You ever wonder if some people are born wrong? I thought about it. No. I think they just stop listening to the good voice inside them. The one that says, don't do this. Don't hurt the people who love you. Once you silence that, it's easy to become someone else entirely. For the next few days, we didn't talk about the letter again. But something had shifted. Daniel seemed lighter. Not happy, but freed. As if the ghost of Evelyn had finally stopped following him. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset burn gold over the fields, he said quietly, "Do you think she's really gone?" I smiled faintly. I think people like her never leave. They just turn into lessons we never forget. He nodded. Then maybe that's good enough. I looked at him, at the sky, at the world slowly healing around us. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about letting go of the past. Maybe it was about learning to live with it. But that night, as I was locking up, I noticed something strange by the front gate. A small box, wrapped in brown paper. No note this time, just my name, again. My chest tightened. I carried it inside carefully. Daniel was already asleep. I opened it slowly under the lamplight. Inside was a small glass vial, empty, and a single photograph. It was Evelyn, smiling, standing beside a woman I didn't recognize. On the back of the photo, one line was written in the same trembling handwriting. I wasn't the only one. My breath caught. For a long time, I just stared at it, the chill creeping back into my bones. The confession wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something darker. And as I turned off the light that night, I realized the trap I'd set 18 months ago might have caught more than one spider. The second poison. The photograph sat on my desk for days. Each time I passed it, that woman's unfamiliar face seemed to watch me. Sharp eyes, a faint smile, the kind of smile that hides more than it shows. I'd been wrong before, but something deep in my gut told me this wasn't over. Evelyn's letter was too careful, too final. And now this photo, mailed after her supposed disappearance? No return address, no explanation, just 5 words. I wasn't the only one. I took it to Daniel after breakfast. He was sanding down a piece of wood for the porch railing, humming softly, a sound that felt like peace. When I handed him the photo, his humming stopped. He turned it over in his hands. frowning. "Who's this woman?" "I don't know," I said. "But she sent this after your wife disappeared." He stared at me, jaw tightening. "You think she's connected?" "I think Evelyn left more behind than guilt." Daniel's face darkened. "Then let's find out." We started digging. I went through old bills, Evelyn's emails, every paper she'd left behind. Most of it was mundane: grocery lists, charity newsletters, yoga class reminders. But one thing stood out: a bank transfer. $5,000 sent every month for nearly 2 years. Always to the same name, Clara Benson. Daniel's eyes widened when he saw it. "That's her. The woman in the photo." We traced the address on the statements: an assisted living home, 3 towns over. Clara Benson, age 75. "She's older than I expected," I muttered. Daniel shrugged on his jacket. "Then maybe it's time we paid her a visit." The drive was quiet, just the hum of tires on wet pavement. Clouds hung low, the kind that make the sky feel heavy. The facility was small, tidy, white walls, a sign that said Maple Grove Care. The kind of place meant to look peaceful but smell faintly of disinfectant and regret. A nurse led us to her room. "She doesn't get many visitors," she said softly. Clara was sitting by the window, staring out at the rain. Her silver hair was tied neatly. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned to look at us. "Mrs. Benson," I began gently, "I think you knew my daughter-in-law, Evelyn." Her eyes flickered, recognition, maybe fear. "Ah," she whispered. "Evelyn." Daniel stepped forward. "She sent us this." He showed her the photo. Clara's expression tightened. For a moment she didn't speak. Then she let out a dry laugh. "She always said this day would come." "What do you mean?" I asked. She turned to me, her gaze sharp despite her age. "You think Evelyn came up with everything herself?" No. She wasn't the architect. She was the student." "The student?" Clara nodded. "She came to me when her marriage started to crumble. I used to be a counselor once upon a time, specialized in power dynamics, dependency, control. I helped women take back their lives. That's what I told myself." Her voice wavered. "But some of them, like Evelyn, they didn't want balance. They wanted control. Absolute control. And I taught them how." My chest tightened. "You taught her how to poison someone?" Clara looked down. "Not literally. I taught her how to manipulate trust. How to make a person doubt their own reality. How to make a man feel like he was losing his mind. I didn't know she'd take it so far." Daniel's jaw clenched. "So, you're saying you trained her to destroy people?" Clara's lips trembled. "I thought I was helping women reclaim power. But Evelyn twisted everything. She even said one day," her voice dropped, "that her husband's father stood in the way of her perfect life." The room fell silent. Then she looked directly at me. "And now she's gone, isn't she?" I nodded. Clara sighed. "I suppose that's justice. But it won't end with her. There were others. I used to host sessions. I taught dozens of them." She pointed to a drawer beside her bed. "There's a list. Names, dates. If you truly want peace, take it. End what I started." The folder inside was thin but heavy with meaning. Dozens of names, addresses, notes written in Evelyn's handwriting. As Daniel read through them, he muttered, "God, Dad." She wasn't the only one poisoning people. I nodded slowly. The second poison wasn't in the tea. It was in the mind. The kind that seeps through charm, trust, and family. The kind that leaves no trace but silence and guilt. That night, back home, I sat by the fire with the list in my lap. The flames licked the paper's edge, shadows dancing on the walls. Daniel stood by the window. "What will you do with it?" I stared at the names, the echoes of what Evelyn had become. Maybe it's time someone told the truth. Maybe it's time the poison stopped spreading. He nodded. "You'll go public?" "Not me," I said. "Us." For the first time, he smiled. We spent the next weeks writing letters, not of vengeance, but of warning. To families, to doctors, to anyone who might have crossed paths with those women. We didn't accuse, we informed. Quietly, carefully, truthfully. And when the last letter was mailed, I felt something lift from my chest, like the ghost of Evelyn had finally left the house. Spring came early that year. The yard was full of blooms, yellow and soft, the kind my wife used to love. Daniel planted them himself. As we stood side by side, he said, "You really think it's over?"